All right, on this episode of Bowks Talking Bouts, excited to be talking to an individual set to headline BKFC 48, and that all goes down on August the 11th. As for the inaugural BKFC Flyweight Championship, as John Dodson knuckles up and toes the line against JR Ridge, and great getting to have JR on the show. How's your day going there, man?
It's going good, man. It's Friday. Got my training in, and now I got an appointment for some recovery. So it's been going good.
And imagine you'd be quite elated because it seemed like it served a couple masters, like the last kind of call-out sort of thing on the BKFC website, because in one of the headlines from one of the articles there was talking about how you were not only eyeing a BKFC title shot, but also a fight with John Dodson. So can you describe the feeling when you kind of got the confluence of those two things there as your next fight? I would think you'd be on cloud nine there.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever they started the 125 weight class, I knew I was going to be a top contender to fight for the belt. I didn't know when, but I knew that I was definitely going to be a top contender for the belt. I knew John Dodson was coming in. Of course, John is a phenomenal athlete. He's a big name. He's done a lot for the combat sports. He's got a lot of experience, obviously. But yeah, the fact that he comes into the weight class and says that he's going to take over 125, of course, I'm an athlete. I am. If somebody's standing in my way or somebody's trying to take my spot, I can't let that happen. But it was destined for John and I to fight because he's a top tier athlete. And I just knew that he and I were going to face off, if it was for the belt or whoever had the belt at the time. But luckily, with all the timing of everything, of course, John and I are fighting for the belt. Finally, now we're going to have a champion for the weight class.
Yeah, and it seems like you're also looking at it through the perspective of how exciting the actual bout itself could be. Like, obviously the inaugural flyweight title implications are huge for sure, but I was seeing in that same article I referenced that you were talking about how your fight with Chansey was perceived as a banger by a lot of people, and then kind of extending that by saying, like, well, if you think that me and Dodson is going to be an insane fight, what do you think about your guys' styles lends itself to why that'll be the case? Like, obviously anyone that's seen you guys fight knows you both individually are very exciting. Dodson, a huge knockout artist, and you being one of the more established flyweights there. So what is it about this fight where it's like a fireworks kind of matchup, you think?
So with John, we all know he's an explosive, ferocious type of forward style of fighter. He's quick, but I'm quick. I'm ferocious. I am like everybody that John has fought. They've been overwhelmed. And not to take anything from any of those fighters, I respect all of them that have stepped in the squared circle. But John has never faced an opponent quite like me. Nobody's ever tried to fight back with John. And, styles make fights. And with the way my style of fighting and his style of fighting, it's going to be it's going to be the ingredients of a crazy fight. I wouldn't doubt if we had a fight of the night.
Yeah, certainly a very, good chance of that. Like I was saying before, you guys both have track records that, very much speak for themselves. But, just a lot going into this fight, and something you kind of referenced earlier that I thought was sort of interesting, just kind of how, like, he came into the division and almost, like, right from the rip was, like, eyeing that title shot. And I feel like you've been one of the guys that was ranked early on as far as, like, the, instantiated, flyweight division. Like, it seemed like when you got your debut win, you were, like, right there in the number 5 position. So I guess in saying all that, do you ultimately think that your localized experience in bare knuckle will be the big difference maker here with you getting the victory?
Yeah, I think, not necessarily, just because, John has, he's done a lot of MMA fights. He's done a lot of things in the MMA world, and I've done a lot of things in the sport that I came up in Sancho. And I feel like the experience behind the years of experience behind both of us is just going to be it's going to be an exciting fight. There's no doubt in my mind that it'll be a boring fight, obviously. But yeah, I think it's going to be an amazing night. I think the fans are going to love it. I think it's really going to cement my name into the flyweight, in the BKFC flyweight, Hall of Fame. I think it's going to be that style of fight.
Yeah, I mean, hard pressed to disagree with you, and definitely more questions I have with this Dodson fight, but I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't at least briefly touch on the last one, because that seemed like a very significant one. I mean, obviously, in as far as getting that unanimous decision win over Chancey Wilson, and it being an exciting fight and certain things of that nature, but it seemed like a particularly important one, like maybe some, behind closed doors in the training camp difficulties. Like I was seeing a post where you described it as the hardest mentally and emotionally that you've had. So I guess in saying all that, like how cathartic was that victory, just dealing with all those issues and then, getting another victory and everything?
Relationships are tough, man. And I was going through through a breakup through that camp, and all the heartache and pain and no sleep and stress and trying to manage, fight camp and keep my body healthy. Like all the pain that I went through would have meant nothing if I didn't win that fight. Like there's nothing. I didn't want to have any shoulda, coulda, woulda moments in that fight. And with this fight with John, it's going to be the same thing. It's like I have to remember he even has to remember that we are fighting for the inaugural flyweight title, and I'm not backing down. John's never been hit in BKFC, and I'm a strategic, calculated fighter that I can also push the pace and move forward. And the win over Chancey is motivating in itself, just because all the pain and heartache. But Chancey is a tough competitor. Hats off to Chancey. He was the toughest fight that I've had in BKFC. And honestly, in all honesty, Chancey probably has better skill than John. John just has relentless force. So, he's also a southpaw. It's pretty much that fight has prepped me for John. So yeah, like I appreciate Chancey in that fight, and I even appreciate the pain that I went through in fight camp.
And I'm kind of curious too, because I mean, you talk about Dodson's relentless pressure, and his BKFC fights so far have proven that, as far as like how succinct they've been. And I know you were kind of looking for the knockout in that last one, but I would think there would be some benefit to going the full distance and sustaining the energy and general effort all throughout. So is that kind of what you're saying? Like that might come into play a little bit? Like this might be like a championship rounds, well, I mean just like a deeper fight kind of thing. Like maybe it's something that like you could see playing out to the later rounds and everything.
I can see it playing out in the later rounds, but we obviously don't want it to play out in the later rounds. Like we want to come in and dominate from the beginning. I feel like I'm on another level skill wise than John, and we've been prepping and preparing for the fight with John. So I think even though John is an exceptional, I think my skill is far more superior than his. So I think we're gonna bring the fight to him, So hopefully it doesn't go into the later rounds. But if it does go into the later rounds, you know, it's going to be a long night for John.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of interesting, machinations to the matchup and whatnot. We've kind of mentioned it a few times, just this being the inaugural BKFC flyweight championship fight. Like, how much would it mean to you to cement yourself in that spot? I mean, pretty cool to say you'd be the first champion in a weight category and everything, I would think.
Yeah, it would mean the world to me. It would be something that, any fighter, any athlete that comes into a sport, they want to be the best. Like, we're not doing it just to be mediocre. We want to do it to be the best. We want to be crowned the champion. And for me to be the first BKFC flyweight champion, like, that will literally cement my name into the sport of bare knuckle. And bare knuckle is a newer sport. Obviously they brought it back, and now it's the fastest growing combat sports promotion that I'm signed to, and it would definitely be a blessing, and I would, I'd be honored, and I would love to, there's many things that I would love to do, but to be able to be crowned the king of the 125 weight class for the first time at BKFC, there's no words that I have for it.
And I sort of get the impression, too, that as much as you would look at it as a tremendous individual accomplishment, that there would also be a level of, representing the Philippines and everything like that, too.
Yeah, absolutely. My story and how I was brought up, that's, my Filipino heritage, like, I am who I am. And, there's been a lot of great fighters that's come out of the country, and, Manny Pacquiao is an icon in the sport. And, even though that I was born in the Philippines, but I'm an American citizen, I still have to think, wow, a Filipino athlete is now the number one flyweight champion of the world for BKFC.
Yeah, it'd be kind of cool to maybe get like a BKFC Philippines going at some point and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of talented boxers out there. That would be, tell my manager, I was like, that's, that could be a dream of mine. That still can happen. Headline the first bare knuckle event out in the Philippines and do a whole campaign out there and host some tryouts. I would love that.
Yeah, I mean, so much international expansion with the sport, so hopefully that's the case. But kind of curious to bring it back to something you were mentioning earlier with like your base style being Sandshoe and everything. I guess it's a bit of a two-part kind of question. Like, is there any transferable elements from that discipline that pay off for you in a bare knuckle context, and also what are some different aspects of how you go about training for a bare knuckle fight versus like what you would have done in Sandshoe?
People know about it unless you're in the fight world. It's very similar to Muay Thai. If you can imagine Muay Thai mixed with judo, you don't fight on the ground. You get back up, start boxing, and kick in again. But yeah, like whenever I was first training, my coach back in Texas, he came to the States to get his education. His name's Ian Lee. He lives in Lubbock, Texas. So basically, when he came to the States, he wanted to open up his own gym. He did that. I was one of the originals. But the thing is, with him and his style, he was a boxer before he was a Sandshoe guy in China. And every time we would go back overseas for fights, like he's the man. Like he was named the outstanding athlete of the Republic of China a couple times while he was fighting. But the best thing was for me, I think he had a boxing background before he was very successful in Sandshoe. So his style was was leaned more to the boxing side. So the tempo of boxing, the combinations of boxing. So if I didn't have him as my coach originally, my boxing probably wouldn't be as good as it is now. But as far as preparing for a bare knuckle fight or preparing for a Sancho fight, very similar. You put your body through hell every single time. Fight camp is very stressful. It's just the fact that I'm not kicking anymore or throwing an elbow anymore, or throwing somebody to the ground. So I just got to focus on more of the boxing side of the sport. So as far as preparing, it's about the same, mentally, physically.
Well, I appreciate that insights, and it seems like it would make you very familiar with like the infighting and just the fluidity with the clinch positioning that the BKFC rule set offers. And as much as you're talking about working more with your like Western boxing, like at range kind of approach, it would seem like John Dodson has had his most success more in the boxing exchanges and kind of within that sort of range. Like, does it almost behoove you to kind of use that experience with in the clinch and make it a real dirty infighting based kind of bout, or are you just kind of being adaptable and fluid with wherever the fight may go?
Yeah, kind of being adaptive and fluid of where the fight goes. I'm very. I would say that I'm able to call audibles, obviously in the plan. If some things aren't working, I'm able to. I feel like with all the experience, I'm educated enough to make those adjustments in the fights. So wherever the fight goes with John, I'll be more than prepared for it. So regardless if it's dirty boxing in the clinch, picking my shots from the outside, however John is how the fight will be. So I'm able to do it all.
Yeah, for sure. I get what you're laying down in that regard, and everything makes sense when you lay it out in that kind of way. I guess one of the last things I wanted to touch on, because I'm noticing that Dodson is going to be that partisan favorite in this one, just with him being the New Mexico lad there and everything. Like, does it embolden a certain something in your performance to kind of be like the quote unquote away player, like go on someone else's home turf and kind of throw down, as it were?
It doesn't. Albuquerque's a big fight. It's almost like the fight capital, one of the fight capitals of the world. Albuquerque's a big city, and the fact that he's from Albuquerque, he's got a lot of fans. It doesn't bother me. I knew I was going to go in as the underdog in this fight just because John is, very well known. But, I do also have fans too, that, have kept up with my career, and they know that, how I am as a fighter and know how I can fight. But it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me much at all.
Yeah, for sure. Just thought to ask, because I know some people almost prefer being the away person. Like maybe when it's like their hometown, they've got like people hitting them up for tickets and all kinds of, other stresses not related to the fight, I guess.
Right. What's crazy is I grew up in Texas, so I've got a lot of people coming out from Texas that are coming out to the fight. So I'm gonna have a few people out there. I've got people flying out from Tampa. I'll have a few people there, but yeah, the stress of trying to sell tickets and all that, like it just adds another layer of stress through camp. I wish it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I wish now it's easy because they can make a link for us rather than having a bunch of tickets on hand.
Yeah, no, definitely seems like it would save a lot of time, but I'd want to be mindful of your schedule and, what you're getting up to the rest of the day, JR. I do appreciate the time and everything, but curious if there's maybe a final parting thought you'd want to put out there as we're wrapping up here, man.
I appreciate you having me on. Appreciate the interview. I just want to say, everybody tune in. This is going to could be possible fight of the year. And, I'm about to shock the world. You know, John Dodson is an admirable guy. You know, I like John. You know, I've been a fan of John's all through his career, and he's also done a lot for the smaller weight classes. But, you know, he's had his day in the sun, and it's my time to shine. So everybody tune in and watch the fight.
Yeah, I mean, incredibly exciting just with what you guys bring to the table, but just even the historical connotation of it crowning the first ever BKFC flyweight champion. So definitely excited for BKFC 48 and counting down those days until August 11th. But to reiterate, JR, thanks for the time and the great insights. But until this all goes down with the fight, you enjoy the rest of your day, man. Thank you.
All right, man. I appreciate it.